Hello, my name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and I am a vegan confidence coach. I specialize in helping vegans eliminate people pleasing so they can confidently be themselves and navigate the challenges of having a lifestyle different from the people around them. Here on my channel, The Confident Vegan, I share content on Tuesdays for Topic Tuesday, where I interview guests and share other personal development topics. On Fridays, I have Food Friday, where I share recipes and other food-related content. Today, my special guest is Trevor Banerjee. Trevor is a renowned motivational speaker, workshop facilitator, and author of the Amazon bestseller, The Freedom Switch. As a qualified empowerment coach, he has spoken to thousands in over 10 different countries and is considered a thought leader on the topic of effective inner and outer communication. With a double master's and over 2 decades of experience of working for large corporations such as ANZ Bank, Aldi, Barclays Bank, and King's College, as well as running his own agency, Trevor's passion is to bring big org experience to young individuals. Trevor is an Indo-Australian who was born in the Middle East and is now a resident of the United Kingdom. As a global citizen, Trevor has recognized that people all over have the same need to feel happy, purposeful, and fulfilled. He helps them achieve this by teaching them how they can be empowered, authentic versions of themselves. Trevor is a passionate vegan and environmental advocate and believes that all of what he teaches as an empowerment coach can help vegans be more impactful in their communication to others. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's so great to have you here. I'm so excited that we connected. We have a lot of things in common with the work that we do, and I feel like we're going to have a really great conversation today. So
I
thanks
think
for
so
stopping by.
too. I think so too. I'm excited. Let's get it on.
Yeah, so the first question I always ask my guests is, what is your vegan story?
Well, my vegan story, mine's not a very sexy story, but it was very powerful for me. So about 10 years ago, I can't for as long as I remember actually, I've always had stomach issues. And about 10 years ago, I started addressing things like fatigue and feeling really tired after meals and things like that. And I just decided to go to a dietitian. And what she suggested that at that time was, just cut out meat and see how you feel. And I did that and I felt great. So I had no understanding or idea of the ethical and environmental implications. I was purely looking at it from a health perspective. But I cut out meat and red meat first, and then all other kinds of animal products. And the last one to go was dairy. That took a while, especially because my wife was vegetarian at that time. So the whole process took about a year of being on and off the wagon. But it took a documentary, which is basically a talk. And I'm so happy to say that I recently reached out to the person who gave that talk, and he responded very lovingly back. But it's a talk called The 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. You can find it on YouTube. I remember watching it, and I remember feeling like I was hit by a bus. And the feeling was, oh my goodness, how could I have lived 30 plus years of my life and not connected dots that are as simple as a cow needs to be pregnant for the cow to produce milk,
Mhm.
or animals, there is no humane way to take an animal's life. So things like that really hit me in that documentary. And then, of course, I watched other things like Gary Yourofsky and Bite-Sized Vegan and really popular people at that time on YouTube. I'm talking about 10 years ago. And that then led me to then deciding to not just be vegan, but also make it a part of my career and my business.
Cool. I can relate to that in a similar way, where just how food was making me feel. Dairy was making me feel a lot of discomfort and just not feeling great. I was having skin issues and it was
Yes.
infecting my like sinuses, and I decided to take a break from it and I did an experiment for 30 days and
Hmm.
I felt better. I didn't realize there were ways it was making me feel bad that I didn't even realize it was making me feel bad, right? You start to feel lighter. And then I just started, when I was looking up all these dairy-free recipes, I came across all these vegan recipes, and then I discovered that vegan food's very exciting and more creative and more just more appealing than the boring stuff I was making.
Oh my God. Tell me about it. My sister just shared, my sister's vegan as well, and she shared a mac and cheese recipe that I'm dying to make this weekend. Um, but yeah, it's so simple. It looks delicious. She says it makes her, reminds her of times when we as kids used to eat mac and cheese.
Hmm.
So, it's things like this. We live in a time and age now, Jen, that I can't think of any excuses really. It's we've got all bases covered, and we're in a position where we can not just survive, but we can thrive on whole food, on a plant-based diet, and ideally on a whole food plant-based diet.
Yeah, absolutely. Like now it's even easier to be vegan more than ever. And it started with me for the food, and then I started watching documentaries, and then
Yes,
one of the things a common thing that a lot of other vegans I've spoken to is that there's this disconnect, right? We all
yes.
grew up eating, most of us ate a standard diet of meat and
The
as the
sad
main
diet.
focus,
Yep.
right? The sad diet. And yeah, and then when you like where it comes from, but you don't really think about it that much. And then all of a sudden
Yes.
you realize and you're like, "Oh my God, why am I doing this?" And then it's such a process. And this is why vegans, I think we get so passionate when we discover these things, because our lives change. I can speak for myself, but it seems to be a trend with other vegans I've spoken to, is when you change, when it starts with what you put on your plate, and then it starts with other lifestyle changes, but it
Yes.
also trickles down in other ways. Like I feel like we become more intentional about things, we see the world very differently,
Yes.
and then we want to communicate that and shout it, off the top of a mountain, and sometimes it doesn't land very well.
Yes. Yes. Tell me about it. Yeah.
And so that's a big part of the conversation we're going to have today.
Yes.
How to be better communicators as vegans. And even if you're not a vegan and you're watching this, I feel like you can get a lot of value on just better communication too,
Yes.
as well. So, what, before we dive into that, can you share a little bit more about your work and what inspired you to do the work that you do?
Sure, sure. So, I went and about, around the same time, 10 years ago, when I was asking a lot of questions from myself, I realized that what I basically want to do is just feel very empowered, feel like I'm being authentic, true to myself, um, and in that process being the best version of me. And then I'd love to teach everyone else to do the same. So I got certified as a life coach, an NLP practitioner, did that for a while. That then transitioned to business coaching
Mm-hmm.
because I used to be a business banker back in ANZ. That then transitioned to startup coaching. And then about 6 years ago, I've got a small team. They're all vegan or transitioning vegans, and they do wonderful business support related activities like website and social media management, etc. And we were having a discussion. We said, you know what? We don't want to be working with non-vegans anymore, or we don't want to be working with people who aren't on the same path as us. We want to be supporting our community. So that's when we decided to start the Freedom Switch, which was an agency for heart-led aspiring entrepreneurs. So people who are either vegan or are aware and mindful and they want to go down that path and they have an idea that they think can make this world a better place. So I'm happy to say we worked with a whole bunch and helped start up a whole bunch of businesses from, solopreneurs like coaches to people who've launched proper products, like waste-free products and sound healing equipment and things like that. So it's been a fantastic journey. But that being said, my latest um, avatar of what it is that I want to do is to focus on the individual. I love the business coaching, but I think that my biggest impact is when I work with individuals and I help them recognize the power that lies within them. And in that process, help them to become self-empowered so that they can live their best lives. And I especially want to do this with vegans, especially because I'm so passionate about this community.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like it's very interesting how one skill set led to another skill set, and then combining it into with what you love and what you're passionate about with veganism.
Yeah,
I got a coaching certification in 2017 around the time I became vegan,
yeah,
and was focusing on career coaching and other types of personal development focus, and then that went into confidence coaching. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and between the tools that I learned, it, getting my coaching certification and my own personal experience, I really wanted to help people eliminate people pleasing
yeah.
in their lives and live their best life. And part of my vegan story is I was afraid to become fully vegan because I was afraid of how people would judge me.
Yes,
So,
yes,
which is a big issue, because you do deal with judgment when you're around people who, when you're living a lifestyle different from the people around you, you're going to get comments, you're going to get judgment, and you have to get into that space of you're going to do what you're going to do and they can do what they're going to do, and you can't let that bother you. But it takes time. It's like building a muscle, building that confidence muscle, which is that inner work that you do as well, with helping, that inner empowerment, that self empowerment. It takes
yes,
time. And then I wanted to figure out a way to combine that with veganism, because I was really passionate about that. I wanted to bring that into that work that I do. And then I figured it out by creating the Confident Vegan. So it's
love it.
interesting how you do these different things and then you combine it with your passion of veganism.
Yeah,
And here we are now.
absolutely. It's like my coach said, as long as you are self-aware and you're trying your best to follow your path, there's no doubt that you're going to just come across one gift after another, that the universe, yourself, God, keeps providing you with opportunities, gifts, um, and chances to make a difference in your life as well as in the life of others. So yeah, sounds like we're on these paths, or as we were saying just before, we're on our surfboards, surfing the waves,
Yeah, the waves of life.
the waves of life. Yes, absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. And so, what are some common ways that vegans communicate that aren't necessarily helpful?
Yes. Okay, let's get stuck into it. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so Jen, this is something that I think is the most important aspect of vegan advocacy, that is also the most ignored aspect. And that is the way vegans communicate the message of veganism. So we obviously were aware that there's so many different ways that people go about doing it. Some, hold screens and have form cubes in, busy city centers. Others go into, you know, restaurants and, chain themselves and, make announcements and things like that. While others have, very confrontational conversations over dinner tables. Now, there's the various forms that can affect various people, but there's something that we, myself and a few others in this space, have started to do, and we've decided to take a step back and understand the vegan mind, and understand what tends to be the trend between the people that decide to go vegan. Like, how is it that some people just get the message very quickly? And what we found is there seems to be a correlation between people who have felt like they were the victims of some form of atrocity in their childhood or throughout their life. There's been a sense of unfairness. They've developed a lot of empathy, especially towards animals, because they see a defenseless, voiceless animal, and they maybe can relate to what that would feel like. And therefore, such people, A, find it probably a little bit more straightforward to go vegan. And by straightforward, I mean it just makes sense. Oh my God, how can I be doing this? I remember throughout my life, in our family, I'm the nice guy. I was the people pleaser. I was the guy who, everyone turned to, and I would borrow $10 to lend, or borrow $5 to lend somebody 10, right? So
Hmm.
being of that nature, when the information came to me, it was very clear that, wow, this is a decision that I have to make. I can't be involved in this horrific act of hurting these animals anymore. But then what happens is we recognize the cruelty and the error in our ways, and we think, oh my goodness, I just need to go and shout this from the rooftops and tell everybody else so that they stop doing it as well. And it's horrifying to us then when we say to everybody, oh my God, did you know that, there's no humane way to kill an animal, and this is just marketing, and did you know that cows need to be pregnant, etc., etc.? And people go, la 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 la, I don't want to hear you. No, no,
Right.
no, no, don't, ruin my meal. Keep your veganism to yourself. How do you know if somebody's a vegan? Wait, they'll tell you, etc.
Yeah.
And you realize, what the heck is going on? People people aren't taking the message like I did, and you go very quickly, and this is the average vegan that I've spoken to, goes very quickly from confusion or surprise to confusion to anger. And that anger then gradually, in some cases, turns into dismay and just a case of silent resignation where we're like, well, I guess this is just the way it's going to have to be. In some cases, people get stuck in the anger phase. And when that happens, what then happens is we take our emotions, and every time we want to express this message, which is actually a very important message, we're actually talking about saving lives, but we make it about us because we're angry.
Right.
We were angry from before with stuff that's happened in our past, and we're angry now because we're like, oh my God, I hate human beings. I hate people because people hurt me. And then now I can see these people hurt animals. And guess what? They're not interested in changing when I tell them that they're hurting animals. So people are disgusting and I don't care about them. I care about the animals. But guess what? The same people that are disgusting and that are horrible are the ones that are committing what, according to you and me, is the atrocity. So if we want the atrocity to stop, we have to communicate with them. Otherwise, we're just shouting or banging our heads against the walls, and we're just going to end up with people saying, bacon, I'm going to eat some extra meat today just to piss you off.
Yeah.
So that is basically the reason why I feel so passionately, Jennifer, that we really need to recognize that we need to stop making it about us and getting angry and agitated and frustrated. And if we want to make it about the animals, if we truly want for people to stop killing the animals, we need to rethink the way we communicate the vegan message. So, and a big part of that is, and I'll share that with you later on, but it's a big part of it is about being patient and recognizing that we're planting seeds. And this isn't a, oh, watch this video and people are just gonna, make that realization straight away. But it's about revisiting and recognizing that we have to address the way we communicate the message.
That is such very important insight. And, as coaches, we learn a lot about the inner work, right? Our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And so, and also, like energy attracts like energy. So if you go and communicate to somebody in a very angry way,
Yeah,
you're going to get anger right
yeah,
back at you.
yeah, exactly.
And so, by creating but I have found, by leading by example, when I have opportunities, when I get invited to a friend or family member's home for a gathering, I always bring like some meal to share, like some kind of a casserole or something, and then a dessert. This
Yeah,
way I know I always have food. And but it also gives me an opportunity to share stuff. I've
yeah,
had family that has been very supportive. They've made things for me. I had another family member one time so excited to have me over, and she decided to be creative and experiment with vegan food, and she looked up a bunch of recipes, and I didn't even need to bring, I mean, I brought something with me, but I was so full from all the stuff that she made for me. So sometimes people have fun trying it. And so when you do it that way, where
yes,
you invite people in to try something, or sometimes they want to they want to experiment and try cooking with things they never thought to cook with, it can, by inviting people in that way, it I have found it's much better response than and the other thing too is I think people, we have years of conditioning on how things are, and it takes time to break through it. We grew up eating meat, and then you have this like epiphany all of a sudden, like, wow, what am I doing? And everyone else has their conditioning as well.
yes,
And I think there's this fear that no one wants their delicious food to be taken away, right?
yeah,
We
yeah,
love food. Food is good. And so there's a lot of things. So when people feel like the stuff that they're about is being threatened to be
yes.
taken away, that's when all the defenses come up.
Absolutely. It's yeah, there's three primary reasons why people continue to consume meat and dairy. One, taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the, oh my God, let's say Christmas turkey or Easter eggs and so on and so forth. There's and depending on which culture you come from, there's various foods and things like that. So growing up in the Middle East, there wasn't any pork or pig meat consumed, but there was beef. Then I went to India, and there was no beef because cows are sacred, but there was chicken and all of these other meats. Um, so interestingly, we consume because of taste, then because of our culture,
Mm-hmm.
and because of habit and tradition. So it's taste, habit, and culture or tradition. So these things are really difficult, especially if people are very connected to those aspects of their identity. So for example, let's say, for example, if somebody is Muslim and they, part of and they're very religious, and part of their identity is they have to slaughter a goat at a certain age, and they're very they have been made desensitized to that process. Sometimes it could feel like I'm taking away an ide a part of their identity. I'm intruding into their religion
Right.
when I'm actually just speaking about the food, or the animals that are being involved. So things like that, that's where we've got to be so mindful of knowing our audience, understanding who is it that we're speaking to, you know. Um, and then I would say is step one. I've got a few more steps which I can share with you as we continue.
Yeah, I absolutely was. That was going to be one of my next questions was to ask you the step, or what are some of the tips that you have. So this is great, but I just want to, follow up with what you said. It's
Yes,
like meeting
please.
people where they're at, right? If,
Yes.
as coaches, that was a big part of the training that I had, was you got to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
Like, as coaches, we can see things that the client isn't able to see yet. And so you have to find ways that can show others another way of being,
Yes.
but in a way that is supportive with where they are at. Because if
Correct.
someone feels too challenged, they're going to get too triggered for all the various reasons, cultural reasons, traditional reasons, just family. People have a lot of associations with food.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of things going on in our subconscious that we don't realize consciously. So we just know, oh, this person, when we get triggered about something, it can feel like that person's doing something to you, when it really
Yeah.
has to do with all the unhealed stuff that we might have, or just other types of messaging and beliefs that we have in our subconscious. And when that gets triggered, people are not going to be then receptive at all. So that's why it's so important, back to what you were saying, is having these things in mind, and knowing where people are at, who your audience is, before you're sharing it, and asking yourself, what's a way that I can share my veganism with this group of people, or with this person. And sometimes the most simplest way is, hey, would I've had friends meet up with me at a vegan restaurant who weren't vegan, and they were actually surprised that the food was vegan because it just tasted so good.
Yeah.
That's sometimes, I feel like, and I've told other people, that's like the best place to start.
Yeah.
Show people how delicious vegan food is, and that is a great way to get at least a seed planted in the beginning.
100%. You know, the number of people I've met who are very passionate about the environment, because I'm in these groups where we're speaking about climate change and, runaway climate indicators. And, when I speak to them about diet, they haven't made that connection that, oh yeah, I mean, I'm trying to reduce my red meat intake, somebody would say, but they don't recognize the deep correlation between factory farming and climate change. So the next step, the second thing I would say is being educated on topics that relate to your audience or the people that you're speaking to. So if you've got a family that, like in my case, that are very orthodox, traditionally very dogmatically Christian, and they're very serious about their religion, well, one of the things that can help me is making sure that I know certain, say, quotes from the Bible, or
Mhm.
certain inspirational people who are happen to also be Christian or Catholic and are also vegan. And being able to then provide them with that information is key. So me being educated and prepared is way more important than me just trying to, just share documentaries saying, "Hey, watch this." Whereas, I remember somebody, a we were at this stand, and I met an 80-year-old woman, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not interested. My grandson was trying to get me to watch The Game Changers, and I said I'm not interested." I was thinking, why would an 80-year-old woman be interested in watching a documentary? Most of the times, I'm not, no judgment, but most of the times, it wouldn't be of any interest to someone like her. Whereas, maybe if there was other elements that she was interested in, then that could be something that could be presented.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's, again, like, that's that next level of knowing your audience, is
Yeah.
what might be appealing for someone who's in their 80s and really set in their ways,
Yes.
is not necessarily going to be the same thing that someone else is gonna, find interesting or appealing.
Correct.
And so I think, part of it too is when the things that help us grow and evolve, and especially as vegans, the things that help us with our journey to becoming vegan, we think that's the way that's going to help someone else do it. And it could
Yes.
be, but there's no one way to doing anything.
Yes.
And
Correct.
there's no one kind of vegan. And that's another part of my channel, another mission I want to have is there's vegans everywhere from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of cultures, and all kinds of stories and how they became vegan.
Yeah.
And 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 by having this platform, it's showing people that there's different ways to do it. Some people can become vegan just like that, and other people like me took a process for a couple of years to
Mm,
fully do that. Yeah. So and none of it's right and none of it's wrong. I think all of it's impactful. And I don't have a vegan household because my husband's not vegan, but we have a mostly vegan household because he eats a lot of the stuff that I eat. No one buys regular milk anymore. Everyone realized they felt better giving up dairy. So um and so we have very minimal animal products in the house now because of what I just started doing for myself. and
yes.
and and I think that's the way to focus, is just improve, gradual change. It will start to get more, things start to build on top of each other. And so that's a really very important point that you brought, or an important example that you brought up about how sharing something to someone who's like 80. That may not necessarily work for them. So knowing your
Very true.
audience is definitely very important.
100%. Yes, absolutely.
And so what are some other tips that you wanted to share?
Sure. So, so number one, educate yourself, understand and learn about the various aspects whether it's to do with, depending on how deep you want to go, but understanding how the meat and dairy um, system works, understanding its impact on the environment, of course, on the animals, on our health. So understanding these things and equipping yourself with all of these amazing tools that are out there, documentaries, books, experts, platforms. There's platforms that provide you with free coaching and advice if you try, um, if you challenge yourself to go vegan for 21 days. There's another one called Veganuary, which also does something
Mm-hmm.
similar. So amazing resource. So having all of that handy is super important, number one. Two, as I said, understanding your audience and relating to them. So if somebody is talking about sports, let's not change the topic and start talking about the weather. Allow for them to continue and recognize, and as you said, let's meet them where they are and let's use, because we've got tons of information in every facet of life that supports veganism. So if somebody is interested in sports, one of the things that you could say is, hey, did you know that, you could be, the greatest or the best performing sports people in the world, and there's no need for consumption of meat and dairy. And you then go ahead and show information like Novak Djokovic and Carl Lewis and Lewis Hamilton and so on and so forth. So relating to the audience. In terms of the conversation, now this is the part where many of us trip up because we get into the space where we start telling
Right.
the person that we're speaking, hey, this is you need to do this and this, you should be this way, etc. Whereas research, as well as it's really well documented, that the best ways to plant seeds is by asking the right questions, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily having the right answers. So the resources that you have, that's great, but you want to start with the right questions. So for example, if somebody is interested in sports, let's say, you could start asking questions around, Hey, so I'm just curious, do you feel that one needs to consume meat and dairy to be a good sports person or to be physically fit and healthy? And then following what is known as the Socratic approach, which is asking questions that are open-ended and that enables for the listener or the responder to come to a conclusion themselves. So if someone, say, for example, says something like, "Oh, I only buy humane, I don't buy factory farm. I only buy humane meat." I hear this quite often. A
Right, the
nice response,
humanely kill. Like, how do you humanely kill anything?
exactly. So a great question at that point would be, "Oh, I'm genuinely curious. How do you humanely take a life?" Right?
Yeah.
And let them figure it out for themselves. And very often people can go on the back foot and people will defend because people don't like looking silly or being made, there's a presumption that they're being made a fool of. So they may do that, but as long as you're not being condescending, you're genuinely wanting to say, "Hey, I'm genuinely curious. I haven't got a straight answer yet. I'd love to know. How do you humanly kill it?" So, how do you take away the life of a being that doesn't want to die, right? So things like that can really be powerful. So asking the right questions, not necessarily knowing the right answers. And the last two are also super tricky. The first one is patience and recognizing that what we're actually doing is we're not on a conversion spree, we're planting seeds. And I've had so many people who've messaged me over the years that have said, "Hey, you remember a couple of years ago you posted something?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think so." And they say, "Well, that really got me thinking. And, I started eliminating a few things and now I've gone vegan."
Wow.
So how amazing is that? But if I were at that time only focused on, I need to get people to go vegan today, yes, I do understand that in 2 or 3 years, way more animals have had to die and have been killed because this person's taken their own time. However, they've now changed. So way fewer animals are going to have have to die because this person has decided to go vegan, and because that seed that was planted has now bloomed into a fully grown tree. Is this is something that you can relate
I
to as well,
resonate
right?
with everything. Yes, I just didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, I resonate with everything that you're saying. And the seed planting is, you know, anytime we impact somebody, and even if it takes 2, 3 years or whatever, it's still impact.
Yeah.
And the people that that person touches, they're
Yes.
going to be impacted. And so it's going to be this domino effect. Like, we can't, there's so many different things ingrained in humanity, and we can't change it all. Change is a process, whether it's with ourselves or with the humanity as a whole, right? It's
Yes.
not going to happen overnight. So when I get stressed out about that, I focus on the things I do have control over and how I show up,
Yeah.
and in hopes that that'll have an impact that way. And yeah, like you said, it might take a few years, and unfortunately there are animals that have been lost during that period of time, but then there are also animals that are being saved.
Yes.
And because that person has been touched, anyone who they touch, and eventually veganism has grown so much, I feel like, in the past 10 years especially,
Yeah.
and I feel like it can only grow even more from here.
Yeah.
The more of us that are out there planting seeds and connecting with people in a way that they'll be receptive, in 50 years from now, I feel like there could be a really big shift
Oh
in
yeah.
in
Yeah.
in, in how things are done.
Absolutely. Let's not forget about exponential change. All you need is for the proverbial to hit the fan and for governments all around the world to recognize, "Oh my goodness, we don't have any more time. with
Yeah.
regards to climate change. We have to make some drastic changes. And when you start getting um, some serious implications towards the meat and dairy industry, it doesn't matter how powerful they are. You know, the horse carriage industry was very powerful before cars showed up, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know, there's numerous various examples of similar things. So we we can have incredible change, and we can within our lifetime be in a position where, you know, some of us are telling our grandkids, hey, you know, or our grandkids telling us, oh my God, I can't believe that you guys used to eat animals. Whoa, you know.
Yeah.
So that could potentially happen. But let's focus on our area or our circle of control and the things that we can do immediately. And that comes down to the way we communicate the message.
Yeah. And
So
it'll
it's
have a
the,
ripple effect.
and it'll have a ripple effect. Exactly. So patience is definitely there. And then the last one is practice what you preach, or be that that vegan that you would have loved to have met before you were vegan,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So if I'm talking about, for example, I remember somebody was talking about how vegans tend to be much more calmer and they're not so agitated because apparently meat can cause that in you. I don't know if this is factual or not, or if it's something spiritual. But the person who was conveying that message, the vegan, was very angry.
Wow.
So, so so you're kind of negating your point, or
Yeah.
talking about, you know, how, oh, vegans are so fit and so amazing, but then you're not fit yourself. Now, I'm not asking for all vegans out there to go and start, you know, running marathons, but start recognizing that the better we look after our mind, body, and spirit, the better position we will be in to be able to communicate this message. And if we're not, you know, we want to show a lot of this, we show this compassion towards these animals, which is completely understandable, but very often we don't show it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then that sort of um, self-sabotaging behavior doesn't do us any favors, nor does it do our cause any favors. So the best thing we can do sometimes is just focus on ourselves. We do really well. I work with a wonderful man. He's a natural vegan bodybuilder. I think he's in his 50s now, if not in his 60s. I think he lives in Florida. His name is Jeff Palmer. And he says to me, for a man his age, when he goes to the gym and he'll wear like a proudly vegan, you know, tank top. People come up to him and say, "Oh my God, surely you can't be vegan. Oh, come on. You know, what sort of steroids are you taking? What are you taking?" And he
Right.
shows them, you know, no, I'm absolutely 100% natural. And he says, just him being looking the way he does and just saying that, you know, I'm vegan on his t-shirt has led to so many people in his gym and in his circles go, you know, making the transition as well. So but again, as I said, this isn't just about fitness, it's about us looking after our mind, body, spirit, the way we communicate. And by doing that, we become such incredible ambassadors of this beautiful message. What is this message? It's about kindness, it's about compassion, it's about empathy. So if we are embodiments of kindness, compassion, empathy, I have no doubts that people will take that message on way more seriously and allow for us to plant the seed.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'll share a personal story. My son,
Please.
who's he just started college in August, and he wasn't vegan at home, and then he went away to school, and about 4 months ago, he started being vegetarian, where he just started, just reading different things, and it just all of a sudden something clicked for him where he couldn't eat anything that was living. He still does dairy and eggs, but but that's that shift, right? That's that
Yes.
transition,
Yes.
right? But and he's seen me being vegan for almost 7 years now, and so now he's been vegetarian. And look, I was vegetarian for a bit before I transitioned to being vegan,
Correct.
and that's what it is. But it's all good. It's all part of that change. And by me just living that example, he figured it out on his own. And that's the way, and that's the more effective way of doing it. I think, and energy is everything. So
Yes.
how we're thinking and feeling on the inside, that's going to come out in how we communicate. And so by doing that inner work
Yes.
and becoming aware of our energy. So when you have that awareness, you can still feel angry and still give space for your feelings and emotions, but they don't control the situation. Where,
Yes.
right? So it's like you can have your feelings, you can be angry and upset that this person isn't, you know, be vegan yet,
Yes.
but you don't have to communicate that to them, right?
Correct.
And by having those open-ended questions, which is why coaching is so powerful. A lot of part of coaching is asking really powerful questions. And there's been times clients have asked me, I've never thought of that before, when it's, whatever question I ask them, because nobody usually asks us these things, right? And
Correct.
then when we're asked these things, it helps us stop and think a moment and come up with these conclusions for ourselves. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that I feel like we could talk for a while on all these things. It's such important work, and I feel like you're doing a great job just helping people understand this really important point of communication. Because whatever we're communicating in our lives, if we're communicating from an angry place, no one's going to
Yeah.
be receptive to what we're trying to
Exactly.
convey.
Yes, absolutely. The more we allow for this information to flow, the more we be the change that we wish to see in the world, as Gandhiji once said, the more likely it is that it will resonate. It will resonate in the
Yeah,
churches, in the farmers markets, in schools. Um, Already, I know of some people, for example, who give talks in schools, and young minds are so much more open to this information because they haven't been indoctrinated into it
right.
yet. Yep. The culture and the traditions and everything is still very fresh and new for them. So for them, they hear about it and they're like, oh my gosh, yes. If there was an apple and a little bunny rabbit, I would eat the apple and play with the bunny, not the other way around.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, because
So,
that's the thing, Pete, too, right? People, they don't see how the packaged meat ended up in the grocery store, right?
yeah.
Even though they know what it is, you don't really think about it. Versus if, you're someone seeing that whole process of it going to that would make a lot of people all of a sudden think twice. Like you said, if someone's handed a bunny rabbit or an apple, they're gonna, a little bunny hopping around, they're gonna take the apple. And
Yeah,
so it's helping people with that disconnect and disassociation, which takes time to
correct.
deprogram the things that we just grew up learning and doing that was part of normal society. And at one point there's a reason why people did the things that they did, and now it's about being open to change. And our world is growing and evolving, and old ways aren't necessarily the best ways for this present time. And so it's just figuring that out, and trying to find a way that we can connect these important messages to others.
100%. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I feel like we could talk more about a lot of different things. This has been a great conversation, so thanks again
I
for
think so
coming on
too.
here.
Thank you.
What are some inspirational resources you would like to recommend?
Well, number one, the documentary that got me across the line, or the talk, which is 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. The I'm just going to pull it up just a second. So the person who speaks in that His name is James Wildman or Wildman, and definitely that. And then there's basically three major reasons that we talk about um, to go vegan. One is for your own health. The other one is for the environment. Third is for the animals, of course, and the ethical side. For your health, I would always recommend two documentaries, What the Health and Forks Over Knives.
I love forks over knives.
It's amazing. But What the Health is equally incredible. Very, very good research shared in that documentary. The second, which is the environment, Cowspiracy, is incredible. It was a path-breaking um, um, uh, documentary, but also there was a follow-up called Seaspiracy, which talks about marine life.
Hmm.
So those are really powerful. And then the third, which is the ethical side, if one chooses to do so, this is the throwing somebody into the deep end because it's very confrontational. But the two documentaries I'd recommend there are Earthlings, of course, that's like the godfather of vegan documentaries, and Dominion. Dominion is a fantastic one. There's loads of other ones along the way. Um, for vegetarians who um, are finding meat or struggling with meat, there is a new Indian documentary that's come up because India has a unique challenge where a lot of people are vegetarian, but they don't realize that by being one of the highest consumers of dairy, they're actually funding the beef industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with with that, there's an amazing documentary called Maa Ka Doodh, which translates to Mother's Milk. Highly recommend watching that. You can find it with its translation, Mother's Milk. And then there's a shorter, more very powerful video called um, uh, yeah, oh, one sec. Give me a second. I don't remember the name now, but oh yes, dairy. Okay, there's a short. Let me rephrase that. So there's a shorter, very powerful video that's called "Dairy is Scary." It's on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. I think it's about 3 or 4 minutes long, and it basically just within that time shows you the whole process of what happens to a dairy cow. Um, so these are some of the things that I'd recommend. There's books as well. The one book I would highly recommend is a book by a dear friend of mine. Her name is Claire Mann, and the book is called Vistopia.
Oh,
And
okay. That
yeah,
title
and
sounds familiar.
so Vistopia, it basically talks about the dystopic state that we just discussed earlier on today,
Yeah.
that vegans get into when they realize that they want to be vegan, but they also realize that nobody else does. So it's that feeling of alienation, that strange confusion, anger, frustration. So it's dystopia, and it's fantastic because it really articulates and helps people recognize, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one feeling this, but also shows them and gives them some guidance on how they can improve.
Great. Those sound like really great recommendations. I definitely want to check out that book. It sounds like it'll be helpful in the work that I do with the
I think
clients
so.
I work with as well. So,
Yes.
uh, this has been so great. Thank you so much, Trevor, for coming on here today. And before we end, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Wonderful. So you can connect with me on socials just by my name, Trevor Banerjee. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can email me on trevor@trevorbanerjee.com. And you can check out my platform, which is trevorbanerjee.com. And that's Trevor, Banerjee, which rhymes with energy. Trevorbanerjee.com is me.
Great. And I'll include all of those links as well down in the notes below. So those of you who are watching, want to connect with Trevor, you can do so very easily. All right. Well, thank you so much for having this really great conversation. It was really insightful. And I thank you, those of you who tuned in. And I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.